According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner here in the United States. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men. Find out what Montgomery County is doing about this problem and how you can possibly assist victims of domestic violence next on Connecting Our Community. Hi, I'm Pat Shoemaker. Welcome to Connecting Our Community. Our first guest this evening is Montgomery County Sheriff Darren Popkin, and our second guest is Cheryl Kravitz with the Family Justice Center and also a survivor of domestic violence. Welcome to both of you. First of all, let's start by saying, what is domestic violence?
Yeah, domestic violence is a very unhealthy relationship between two partners, whether it's involving physical abuse, emotional abuse, stalking, texting, coercion, involving certain sexual matters. It is something that usually happens between two partners and just creates a terrible situation where somebody is living in really in great fear a lot of times for their life.
And does it have to, when we say domestic violence, does that mean two people who are married, two people who are living together, or is it other circumstances as well?
Well, fortunately, over the last few years, we have been able to expand that definition, because at one point it was just married people who were married. But we know in these times that relationships extend way beyond just married people, and whether it's people who are intimately having partnerships and together, or that are somehow non-married but are living together, or had a child in common, or cohabitating, some relationship together, cohabitating or not. We've been able to expand that definition, so if somebody were to be involved with this sort of unhealthy relationship, yes, it would fall under that definition.
And Cheryl, as a victim, would you tell us just a little bit about the circumstances for you?
Well, I now call myself a survivor rather
me.
than a victim. One thing I'd like to add to what Sheriff Popkin said is that there is also a lot of abuse in dating relationships, and he referred to it in terms of the texting, the stalking, and one of the things that Sheriff Popkin and others do with the Family Justice Center is work on that very thing, because you're right that the description of what abuse is, whether it's dating abuse or domestic abuse, you know, they kind of overlap. In terms of myself, I was systematically abused in a marriage for almost a decade. And one of the things that I think is a hallmark of abuse is that the man or woman or child who is being abused is afraid to come out, to be public about what is happening, because they are afraid of the stigma of staying in a relationship, whether it be a marriage, dating, or, you know, in some cases, unfortunately, child abuse, elder abuse, because you're afraid to let people know what's actually going on behind closed doors.
And do you think that people sometimes think that this is normal, that, well, boys will be boys, or that's just the way men are? Do you think that there's any of that comes into it as well, that maybe women just think, well, this is just the way he is, and I'm sure that other people are going through this exact circumstance. This isn't abnormal. Why would I report this person who loves me, who I love?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a small number of people who maybe fall into that, but the reality is really that it takes incredible courage for someone who's a victim of domestic violence to come forward.
Yeah.
A lot of times the person who is doing the abuse and the violence really is the main breadwinner in the house. Financially, they can't leave. There might be children involved. And so it really is hard to come forward. And as Cheryl mentioned, you know, it took 10 years to get to that point in her relationship, and thank goodness she did. But so it's really a matter not so much that people really know when they get to a point where it's really unhealthy, but it's what to do about it, where in the county and where you live, the location where you live, what services are going to be available for when you do come forward? How are you going to be protected? How do you protect yourself in the future? So it's those things really that are continually crossing somebody's mind. And education is a big part of this too, as we are trying to you really can't really arrest this away or enforce this away, but education, and now we're trying to get into every health class in Montgomery County schools to teach what a healthy relationship is versus an unhealthy one.
Yeah, and I think that that's such an important thing, that young men, young women, older men, older women as well, need to know that this is not a healthy thing. If it's happening to you, you shouldn't put up with it. You deserve better than that. Do you find that there's an age, perhaps, where people have a higher self-esteem or a lower self-esteem?
No.
That maybe they'll put up with it and won't put up with it?
I don't think it has to do with age at all. It has to do with the person's decision to want to be able to leave. There's a statistic that says it takes on average 7 times for an individual who is being abused to actually make the final cut and go. And I can tell you that's true. And, you know, it's really hard, as the sheriff said, it's really hard because a lot of times one of the things that happens is the woman, and usually it is a woman, is economically dependent upon the person that she is either married to or in an intimate partnership with, and is afraid to go. She's embarrassed to talk with friends and family. There might be stalking involved. And, you know, again, what goes on inside these houses or what goes on in schools and dating, whatever, we don't necessarily know about. So it's incumbent upon friends and family to look for the signs, to know what it is that is one of the points about domestic abuse or any kind of abuse, so that you can be a non-judgmental person there to help in case that individual wants to talk at some point, and not to be mad if that person is not ready to go.
Yeah. And that brings up another point of what are the signs? How do you know something might be happening? And then how do you approach that person and say, this isn't right, this shouldn't be happening to you? Are there
Yeah, I mean, I can talk about myself, and then the sheriff can talk about things I think that you've seen. There are a number of things, and I'll talk about it in context of what was happening to me. I was living in a very, very large home. My ex-husband was actually the head of a major nonprofit, and, you know, behind closed doors, I was being beaten. So from the outside, it looked like everything was all well and good. I would wear long sleeves, long pants, turtlenecks, because from the neck down, I was totally black and blue, and so I didn't want anyone to see. I was isolated. At the time, we were living in Chicago. He got another job because of problems at that job, and we moved to Oklahoma, which in effect isolated my daughter and myself from any friends or family. So people who would have or could have seen it because they knew us really well didn't. And then I would have to hand over my paycheck every year. You know, I had a very big job, and I was elected to the school board, to the Board of Education. And, you know, I had a job in media, so I was on television, on radio all the time. People had no idea what was going on. And I have to say that until he died, I was afraid to talk about this because, as the sheriff said, sometimes there's stalking involved.
Right. And I also heard that usually when somebody makes the decision to leave, that is probably the most dangerous time, and that a lot of violence escalates at that point when the person decides to leave the relationship. Is that the case?
As I said earlier, it takes just incredible courage for when it gets to that point that someone has gotten enough confidence to know that they're not going to put up with it anymore. And sometimes that doesn't mean that they call the police. Sometimes it doesn't mean that they're looking for court intervention. Sometimes it's either just to get out of the house, it's just to speak with somebody. There's over 5,000 911 calls per year in Montgomery County involving domestic violence calls. So the call volume of these cases continuing happening are high. And out of those 5,000, we receive about 3,000 protective orders, which in some people refer to them as restraining orders, but they're now nationally called protective orders. So, but what is a little contradictory to what most people think is if somebody comes forward and they come to the Family Justice Center, which is Montgomery County's domestic violence center, and you receive court intervention, you're much more likely that the person who has been offending, you're much safer coming forward than if you don't come forward. But it is dangerous that first week, and that's why the sheriff and the law enforcement get involved with safety planning and how to stay safe during that period of time.
Yeah. It's unbelievable to think in a county like Montgomery County or in the United States that this happens so often. It just is the saddest thing, and I'm just going to hold you right there because we're coming to our break.
Okay.
We will be back with more of the show. Please stay tuned. There's so much more that you need to know, and hopefully that will help you either escape a situation if you're in it or help a friend or relative who might be in it. Please come back right after the break.
When you donate goods in response to an international disaster, it's expensive.
They have to cross the sea, pass through customs, be inspected, sorted, then finally delivered.
And often they arrive too late to help, making your good intentions feel a little empty.
There is a better way.
Cash donations are fast, simple, and allow professional relief workers to purchase supplies close at hand.
Cash is best. Learn more at CIDI.org.
It's our duty to serve veterans and military families who serve their country in the most difficult ways imaginable. Together, we can say thank you in so many ways. Small acts of kindness mean more than anything. With our support, veterans and military families can face even the most difficult challenges. Let's honor their service with ours.
Hi, and welcome back to Connecting Our Community. We're discussing domestic violence. And Sheriff Popkin, you were discussing just before we went to the break about what Montgomery County has done in terms of a safe haven or a place where abused someone can go. Could you tell us about that?
Back in 2008 and 2009, we had some very tragic, terrible domestic violence incidents that were homicides here in Montgomery County. They were involving children and a number of other adult female victims, because in most cases in Montgomery County, as nationally, females are the victims in these cases. And it was a very, very tragic situation. And we knew in Montgomery County, in a county like ours, we needed to do something about it and do it immediately. So we found a model called the Family Justice Center in San Diego, California, and I sent staff members out there to look at that. They came back so energized about what this has done out in San Diego and that we can do it here. And basically what this does is it's co-located all services that were involving domestic violence in one location in Rockville. And where a domestic violence victim who used to have to navigate through a very difficult governmental system, especially during a time of crisis,
Right.
it was not efficient. It was not good for the victims who we were trying to help. And so we took all those 40 different locations that were throughout Montgomery County and we co-located them all into one place.
Wow.
So if you're a domestic violence survivor, a domestic violence victim, or you just need to talk to somebody, there was a place in Rockville called the Montgomery County Family Justice Center that you can come to and you can receive services there. And that is everything from speaking to an immigration attorney, to speaking to a Montgomery County Police detective if it's a very serious case, to just speaking to a therapist, making it long term. If there's children that have been witness to this, we have a very thorough therapy program for children there as well. And then not to mention that I have numerous staff there that handle all of the protective orders and the restraining orders. So this is a place that is safe. It's a safe environment, and we will go over every bit of detail of what somebody needs to actually get out of that dangerous situation. Because I know, and data has told me, that if we can get somebody in there and we can get court intervention, we're going to change somebody's lives. So we're going to change somebody's life and really make a difference in someone's lifetime in Montgomery County.
Yeah. That's amazing, and it seems so common sense. I wonder why that isn't a standard in all counties or in all states. Is it spreading? Is that concept spreading, or is this so unique that San Diego and Montgomery County are the only ones?
No, when we opened our Family Justice Center, we were about the 40th across the world.
That's good.
There are some in Europe and in the Middle East,
Holy
believe it or
cow.
not, and we were about number 40. Now there's about 80 of them across the country, and
That's
it's
still
just
nothing.
It's
Yeah.
a small number, and we are the only one that has a Family Justice Center in the state of Maryland.
That doesn't make any sense to me. Is it economic? I mean, why wouldn't that be a standard model?
Well, you know, anytime you have government services, there is a price tag.
Yeah.
But I'm sure in these other jurisdictions, they're doing this. It's just segmented throughout
Yeah.
different parts of the county governments and other jurisdictions, and they're doing the best they can.
Yeah.
But you know, we had a county council and Mr. Leggett, the county executive, who, you know, said, we're going to do this, we're going to do better, and we're going to make sure that we do everything possible that you know, that the victims of domestic violence have somewhere to go, and are going to we're going to save lives. And in those few short years, we have had almost 7,000 people walk through the door.
Wow.
But I will tell you that since we opened our doors in 2009, some of the more serious homicide cases and some of the really more serious physical assault cases there has been a reduction. Now, it hasn't gone away, and
Yeah.
until it goes away completely, we're not satisfied.
Right.
But we are, as I said earlier, we're starting younger, educating, because we know that if we model correct behavior and people have an understanding that if somebody does get into an unhealthy relationship, they'll know it's not healthy.
Right, and that's great. And Cheryl, as a survivor yourself, what, looking back, do you wish someone had said or done, or was there something that, looking back, you could say, if only I had?
Well, the Family Justice Center is one of those things. I was actually there, spoke at the opening of the Family Justice Center, and one of the things I said that day, I remember it so clearly, is this idea of a one-stop shop where instead of navigating the court system like I had to, in fear for my life,
Right.
there would have been one place to go. One of the things that is incredible at the Family Justice Center is the person who goes in doesn't necessarily have to go to court. There is a closed circuit television there that person can talk that way and not even have to go into a courtroom
Wow.
if she or he does not want to do that. And as Sheriff Popkins said, there's a room for kids. My daughter was very young at the time that I was abused, and one of the reasons that I was able to leave when I did is because a non-judgmental friend, as I was mentioning before, noticed. And the night that I finally left, she knew that there was something wrong, and that she asked if my daughter could stay at her house. And that's another big reason that women usually stay, is because they're afraid for their children. And so my daughter was at her house, and I was beaten terribly that night. And she was going to call me on my phone. At that time, we didn't have cell phones, to make sure I was okay. I was in another room and didn't hear the phone ring. And that night, I remember thinking to myself, if somebody cared enough, which is what I am certain a lot of victims are thinking,
Yeah.
if somebody cared enough and showed me they cared, I would leave eventually.
Yeah.
And she showed up with police at my door, and I walked out and left and
Wow.
never went back. But that piece, that I knew she wasn't judging me, that I knew that there was a group where I lived that worked. It was similar to the Family Justice Center in that they had attorneys and social workers, but they weren't able to really navigate the way the Family Justice Center does. They were able to work with me and finally get me out. I still have it actually, a lifetime protective order because it
Wow.
was that bad. I would say that if someone who's watching this either knows somebody who is being abused or is being abused themselves, that there is a place for them. You know, the sheriff won an award for all the work that he has done for domestic violence victims who need a place to go. It's really important that this community steps forward, like we are doing, to let people know that there is a place for them to go that's safe and that we're not going to let up, that we are there for them every day, every night.
So, to be a little bit more specific, if you have a friend or relative, male or female, what would be maybe a telltale sign? You said that your friend felt that there wasn't something right, that something was going on. But what do we look for in our friends, neighbors, relatives? And at what point do you step in and say, is everything okay, without upsetting the person or possibly making that person draw back from the friendship for fear of being discovered?
Isolation, they're not able to see you as much as they had. They don't let you into the house. They're covering bruises. You're looking to see how they're dressed. Their kids are withdrawn if they have children. What helps is to just be there. I do a lot of volunteer work with women who are, usually women who are victims. And one of the things, I'm just there. Hey, anything you want to talk about? I'm just there. I might tell them my story. Somebody might tell them, oh, I saw this show, Eventually, when the person is ready, they'll open up. But if they're not ready, nothing you can say is going to get them from here to here. They have to be ready to go. But the point is not to get frustrated.
We find at any given day there may be 15 to 20 people walk through our door involved with these situations. So often someone may come in with a friend, but more often people come in by themselves because they've just gotten to a point where they know they need help. But they've been isolated. Their friends have pushed away from them. They don't have somebody, but they've more than not, they'll come in by themselves. And it takes sometimes several visits to the Family Justice Center. We have a number of on-site partners there to include Catholic Charities. So if somebody has concerns with immigration, they want to talk to a lawyer, because we don't ask any questions. We're only concerned about safety. The Montgomery County Police are on site. The Montgomery County State's Attorney, prosecutors are on site. Numerous therapists from House of Ruth, JCADA, which is the Jewish Coalition Against Domestic Abuse. So we have a number of people on site that are there to provide those wraparound services as somebody walks in the door. So if you have a friend that can come and support you, then we would encourage it. But more importantly, even if you don't have a friend, just come and we'll make sure that you get all the support and the safety that you need.
Yeah. And as a friend or, potential person to see this, is it just keep checking and keep asking and keep saying, I'm here for you, and at some point hoping that the person will break through and confide? Or is there something that I, as an outsider, could do, call the police and say, I think that this is happening to my friend? Or
good friends will always try to do everything they can. And it is a very sensitive balance of how much you push, because ultimately the person who is experiencing this has to be ready themselves to come forward, to get help. And you don't want to push too hard, but just imagine your friend, if somebody you thought was experiencing that, you saw some signs of bruising and other things, and that they were being isolated, you would want to do everything you can as well.
yeah. I want to thank you both for being with us. This is such a depressing but uplifting, ultimately uplifting, knowing that there is this service available. Please remember the basic signs of abuse. If you suspect anything in your friends or relatives, physical abuse, verbal abuse, constant criticism, the things will be hopefully on the screen as you're watching this. There is help. There is a place to go. So please don't stay in a situation where you feel that you are not safe. Please remember, if there is an emergency situation, always just dial 911. For assistance 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 1-800-799-SAFE, which is 7233. For more information or to contact the Family Justice Center, you can visit their website, which is montgomerycounty.gov/FJC, or call 240-773-0444. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again on the next Connecting Our Community.